So what I'm going to talk about really is about, what George Carlin said. I don't know if you remember. He said the politicians out there, they don't give a about you.
They don't give a about you. They don't give a about you.
And he was right, because not only did Congress take care of all their Wall Street friends, their defense contractors, all their big corporations first, they also allowed other companies, big companies, to dip into the pool of the CARES Act, of the PPP, which was meant for small businesses. So teams like the LA Lakers in basketball took millions of dollars. Shake Shack, who didn't need it, even though they gave the money back. Same with Harvard. All these big companies gave the money back. Harvard had an endowment of I think something odd billion, and yet they're dipping into small business funds. Even hedge fund managers got a hold of this money. We talked about that. But what's really disturbing is that not only did all these big companies get all the money out of the PPP, the small business monies that left the other guys high and dry, the new bill that they were forced to sign and get into action really didn't change much of what's to be done as far as doling out the money. You think that the people would say this is really a serious, nefarious act by Congress and our leadership and Donald Trump and everybody involved, Mnuchin, the fact that they didn't put any strings attached. It was ignorance at best, which is just terrible. How bad can you be that you give money out with no stipulations, that you make the only guideline is that you have 500 employees at each location? So all your mom and pops are still sitting behind and waiting. And like I said, in the new bill, all they did was kick more money down to smaller banks. And they're pretty much saying that you shouldn't take the money out. Like publicly traded companies shouldn't take the money out like they did before, because it was really intended for small business. Now, this was the biggest sin I thought of all, because aside from the fact that we didn't have a rent freeze and a mortgage freeze in the new bill as well, the PPP to me is really the worst thing, because it killed small businesses. There's small business owners that I know that are holding on by a nail, because they're waiting to see this money. We're told to stop working unless it's essential, to stay at home, and the economy has pretty much just come to a halt. So they're just hanging on. But what they're using now on top of things, it really just this is the icing on the cake, ladies and gentlemen. They're using Gestapo tactics of sorts.
We wouldn't have to have Gestapo tactics in the streets of Chicago.
I have a hold of a letter that a friend of mine got who was a small business. Now, when you wanted to get a loan and you're a big corporation or a publicly traded corporation, what do you have to do? You have to sign a piece of paper. It's like nothing. I'm saying, here you are, here's your millions, here are your trillions. The small businesses, they've been holding on, waiting. You can't even contact them. But now they send back stuff where they kind of use scare tactics to threaten lawsuits and fines and penalties and time in jail and all this other stuff. Therefore, they're trying to set up a deterrent for the small guy to grab this money. Hey, if you're a big corporation, you're one of our friends, you're even an energy company, Mnuchin, yeah, help you out, go take your money, here's your money. They even have lines to the Fed and the Treasury for these big companies to get the money, let alone the banks favoring their big clients. But now all they did was give money to smaller banks, and those smaller banks can still take care of their bigger clients as well. And the little guy gets a letter like this. Look at what this says over here. You have the opportunity to withdraw your application if you do not feel it meets the criteria. So they're already kind of threatening you. And down below is all what you can face, the penalties. Please remember that you also certified you understood that knowingly making a false statement to obtain a guaranteed loan from SBA is punishable under law, including 18 USC 101 and by 3571 by imprisonment of not more than 5 years and or a fine up to $250,000, and so on. And they list more laws, and up to $1 million and 30 years in prison if you're not filing it out right. They make you go into question if you're a little guy. They know you're not going to probably afford a lawyer and you can't speak to anybody. This will deter some of the small people from gaining those loans. And that, in essence, is the mentality of what our government is doing to us overall. I mean, there's a lot of stuff you see out there right now. I just saw something the other day. It says what you need to know about government grants, loans, and forbearance to survive the pandemic economy. Well, it's almost like it was in 2008 under TARP. and they told you that you would get a deferment on your loan, a forbearance. The only thing they don't tell you is that after 6 months, they start coming asking for all that money that you were just putting behind, that you deferred. The same thing is going on with the rents, because in the new rule, the new bill, they didn't address a rent freeze or really a mortgage freeze, because let's just say you get all your money, right? You get all your stimulus money, you get your unemployment extra money. It's more than last time you're a renter. You don't make a lot of money. You don't own your own business. You pay that money back to your landlord eventually. Well, what happens when the economy opens it up and it doesn't open up the same way it did before? I mean, are you going to go out to a restaurant right away? I know I'm not, right? So you might be able to keep up your rent and stuff like that and get that extra benefits now because they're giving you extra money. But what happens after? What happens after is when the economy shuts down, you're out of your place because you don't have your job no more. There is no back to normal. It's going to be different. I know people in the United States, we're called the United States of amnesia. We forget things, but there's going to be a lot of people who just won't. Not just germaphobes, just regular people. I'll be skeptical to go out to a restaurant right away. I know you will too. It also says, is rent canceled? Can landlords evict tenants? Late fees, laws, and what we know. And a lot of people have been seeing the hashtag cancel rent. So a lot of landlords are getting really, really nervous out there. Because, a lot of landlords got to pay their mortgage. And if you don't there's only small little Fannie Mae loans and small situations where you get a real forbearance and they kick it to the end of the mortgage. But most of the time, and I have a friend, Graham Elwood, you know him, he had his house taken back from him. So it might seem like they're giving the small guy a few bucks, and when the system eventually gets caught up, I mean, shit, there's people sitting there with no money right now in the food situation. But, we got a lot of things to worry about, and we're not out of the woods. And these new bills, they're not taking care of you. Gestapo tactics they're using. It's only a deferment. We don't know who's going to get this PP money, if they're going to keep on having to hand it out. By most standards, it looks like it was some serious nefarious actions to get all the Congress, all their friends, their Wall Street and their donors, their money, and leave the little guy out to dry, just like they did in 2008. And at best, it's incompetence. Incompetence at the highest level. Mnuchin should have never had this job. He gave money to Kamala Harris for letting him slide, what his banks did back in the days. And he was part of throwing people out in 2008, and it's the same guy now in 2020. It's a shame. For Pasta Jardula, Convo out.